The Loft tool is the oldest 3D modeling tool in the program. It harkens back to before Macs existed, when the product was known as 3D Studio for DOS. Lofting was the primary 3D modeling tool at that time, and it's still very useful today. However, a lot of the objects that I might have lofted in the past, today I would sweep them with the sweep modifier. And the sweep modifier is great at creating objects that have a constant cross-section. But I would use a loft if I was trying to model an object that had a variable cross-section. It might be helpful to understand the genesis of the term loft. It comes from the boat building industry, where ships' hulls used to be laid out in giant lofts. The hulls had variable cross-sections. Imagine the different ribs within the ship. Each one has a different shape. And the overall object was lofted along the keel of the ship, which is known as the loft path. In this demo, I'll show you how to model a VAV box, which is an object that you'll find in the ceiling of many buildings. It's a mechanical part of the HVAC system. And I've chosen this object because it's ideal for lofting. It has a variable cross-section. I'll get started in the front viewport, where I'll sketch in a few different shapes. I'll make a rectangle and another larger one and a circle. Note that I'm not being very careful about the placement or size of these objects. I'll go into the top viewport and sketch in a line. I'll hold down Shift and make that a vertical line with only one segment. Then I'll go into Perspective and turn off the grid, and let's see what we have here. So at this point we have 4 separate spline objects. The line represents the loft path, and these shapes will be the cross-sections of the loft. Start by selecting the loft path. Go to Geometry, Compound Objects, Loft. By doing that, we've defined the path. We actually could select a shape at first, but I recommend against it. It's better to select the path at first, because the 3D loft object will exist right on the path. Next, create the loft object by getting your first shape. We'll instance the shape into the loft so that the original shapes can control the loft geometry. I'll click on the circle to instance that as a shape in the loft. Now we have a loft object in the scene called Loft 01, and it consists of a single shape being lofted along a straight path, creating a cylinder. I'll go into Wireframe by pressing F3. If you look closely, you'll see that there's a little X right here in yellow. That represents the point that we are located on the path. I'll increase the path amount here by dragging the spinner up, and you'll see that little X move along the path. Right now we're moving as a percentage of the path. You can also set that as an absolute distance. I'll use percentage and set this at 15%. Then I'll get shape again and get this rectangle as a shape. So now we're lofting between 2 different cross-sectional shapes along the loft path. Notice how the topology is twisting. Go to the Modify panel and expand the loft. On the shape level, you can select a shape within the loft. Here I will rotate that shape so that the topology straightens out. Let's take a look in shaded mode, and you can see the result. I'll go back to the top level and zoom out. Now I'll go further along the path to 25%, and I'll get an additional shape. I'll click on this larger rectangle, and now the loft is expanding to reach up to that shape which we've just instanced into the loft. Notice how the transition between the shapes is curved. That behavior is controlled over here on the skin parameters rollout. I'll check linear interpolation to get straight sides that bridge the skin in between the shapes. Turn on edged faces mode and you can see the topology. That's controlled here with the step parameters. I'll set these both to 0, and you can see that we lose a lot of the form that we had. I'll add some shape steps back into the loft, and you'll see the topology change in that direction. And this is necessary because we have this curve here. We need to represent that with enough topology. The path steps are in the other direction, and in fact here we don't really need any because we have linear interpolation going in between the shapes along the path. Now I'll instance another shape by setting the path at 75%. I'll instance the same rectangle here again, and you can see it added here as topology into the loft. Go to 85% and instance this rectangle. Now the loft will diminish in size. Then I'll go to 100% and instance the circle, and the loft goes back down, creating a symmetrical object. However, the topology is twisting here, so I need to correct that on the shape level. I'll rotate this, and that looks better. By the way, you can't undo things that you do on the shape level, so be careful. I recommend holding the scene before you make any changes. I'll do that now.